Roll Tide, everybody. Alabama practice continues to roll Tide on, and we're going to talk about that as we get one step closer to Alabama and Western Kentucky. Thanks for hanging out with us on Cover Crimson, covercrimson.com. Clint Lamb, Mick Gillispie. Right after this, we're going to get going and talk about what was said today, press conferences, practice report, all of that right here after this. All right, there he is, Clint Lamb, Mick Gillispie, and you guys know us from this show every single day. We're live right now, so don't be afraid to get in the comment section. And if you're watching and the show's not live, still get in the comment section. We'll take a look at it. It always comes up as we talk Alabama football. So, Clint, yeah, another practice in the books. Yesterday, after we did our show, A.K. Deer committed to Alabama, so it kind of switched the momentum a little bit after losing 3 recruits. You did a great report on what he brings to the table, and then back at practice today, getting ready for Western Kentucky.
Yeah, we got Kane Womack yesterday as far as the interviews, the defensive coaches, all that stuff, defensive players. Today was offense. And so we got some great information from Womack. We got some great information from Sheridan today. One of the first things I want to talk about, because I found it interesting, is Womack talking about the field boundary. It was always left corner, right corner, and Nick Saban's defense. And just from what we know about Womack, he's a field boundary guy, field being the wide side of the field, boundary being the short side of the field as far as hash and where the ball is and all that stuff. Well, he mentioned yesterday that there might be some games where they go in with the thought process, we're going to play field boundary, or it might be a situation where they go in looking to match, and match is not left, right. It is, we want Damani Jackson playing on this player every single snap. If it's a left cornerback, if it's a right cornerback, doesn't matter. Field boundary, doesn't matter wherever that receiver's at, we're going to match it. And then he also mentioned it might be more situational than that. It might be, hey, on third downs, we're looking to match when we've been playing field boundary the entire rest of the game. I just thought that was really fascinating based off of what we kind of thought it was going to be, and it still is going to be that, but it's just they're going to be willing to do some different things. We saw Nick Saban, I feel like early at Alabama, do some matching at times, but he was really later in his career. The majority of the time he was in Tuscaloosa, it was left corner, right corner. So, yeah, I'll be curious to see how it ends up playing out with Womack.
Well, I mean, when you put this defense on paper, it definitely looks different than what Nick Saban did. But the thing about Nick Saban is you can't argue this. I mean, I know some of you guys are going to beat up on Pete Golding because, every time something went wrong, it was Pete Golding's fault. And then every time it went right, it was Nick Saban's fault, which was fine with me. Throw me in that mix. But I thought Kevin Steele was a really good defensive coordinator last year. I just thought it was a great fit for Alabama. I thought that things just flowed the right way. I thought that there was so much more continuity, consistency. It just felt like the type of Alabama defense that you want. Now all of a sudden you don't have Nick Saban there, although I'm sure Kane will probably hear from Coach Saban. He's probably going to ask him, hey man, what do you think about this? He said that, right? How is this defense, like what he's talking about, boundaries and all of that stuff, different than, and honestly, like matching up with guys like, hey, I got Clint Lamb. No matter what he does, I'm going to cover him. How different is that than what we've been seeing?
I think the number one thing that you need to look at when you talk about the differences, because like Kane Womack has said, hey, Alabama was in kind of a nickel type defense, kind of looked like they had a kind of a 4-man front, 2 off-ball linebackers, and 5 defensive backs with a star. We kind of do pretty much the same thing. And he's right on that, but just the principles, the base of it is very different. Like Alabama was a 2-gapping scheme. South Alabama, Womack is a 1-gapping scheme, which means, guys aren't really playing gap control. They're not having to worry about playing 2 gaps. They can be a lot more aggressive. That can, as far as applying pressure, sometimes you would scheme things up where like a Will Anderson could get some one-on-one opportunities, but a lot of like your consistent pass rush kind of across the board in a 2-gap scheme is kind of not there because you're worried more about gap control than penetration and disruption. And, that's good from a limiting explosive plays, especially in the run game. but it hurts you in a lot of ways when it comes to getting after the quarterback. Now, you can't really argue against the results. Alabama, in most years, recent years, I mean, Will Anderson had a lot to do with it, but they've been at or near the top as far as sacks in the country. So it's not like they haven't been able to apply pressure on the quarterbacks, but I think you're not overly reliant on one or two guys to do it. And I think that's going to make a huge difference because, quarterbacks or really, entire offenses are going into the game. They don't know where the pressure is coming from. And you don't have to send extra pressure in order to compensate for the fact that you're two gapping and guys are kind of slow playing it. You can win with 4 a lot more often. You can do some simulated pressure. You can zone blitz. You can do a lot of different things to apply pressure on quarterbacks. And I know I talk a lot about the passing side of it. That's today's college football, right? I mean, you got to be able to stop the pass as much or limit it as much as possible. You have to be able to put quarterbacks under duress. That's how you get the sacks, the negative plays, which are drive stoppers, the turnovers, all that different stuff. You've got to be able to do a lot of this. And I think Alabama, just from what we've seen, it seems like they're going to be able to do that. The positions are a little bit different. The responsibilities are a little bit different. You'll see that kind of that bandit, they'll go kind of more of a 3-man front look, have the Wolf as kind of that 3-4 outside linebacker, and then they'll bring the Husky down as like the other off-ball linebacker, or that other outside linebacker, excuse me, when you're going against like 12 personnel and things like that. It's a very flexible defense as far as, you can get in and out of different looks. You might pull that Wolf off who's playing into the boundary, the short side of the field when they motion. That creates a 3-man front. Now you got a little bit more as far as the underneath coverage, a lot of different things you can do. And I think Womack is a very innovative, smart defensive mind. And I think that just this style of defense is going to allow Alabama's players just to be athletes, man. Go be, you've got the best athletes, the best talent, or some of it. Let those guys run a little bit and let them make plays and have fun. And I think this defense is going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, turnovers is a big thing. All right, guys, as you hang out, I want to ask you a question. If you're hanging out with us, would you please like and subscribe if you're not a subscriber? But give us a thumbs up. That's kind of a way of, knowing that you guys are out there, and that's a way of saying Roll Tide. So Jim, Roll Tide to you, right back at you. Riley, Roll Tide, Southern Red, you are one of the best out there. Thank you. Roll Tide to you, Chris, Roll Tide, and we appreciate you loving our content. All you guys, thank you so much, and we appreciate you being a part of it. Here's a question right here. Do you think Turbo Rogers will flip? I'm not really too sure. I don't really have a lot of intel about Turbo Rogers, but I like that name.
He's taken some visits. I don't remember all the visits that he's taken. I think Ohio State. I want to say maybe Auburn is one of them. He's going to obviously be visiting Alabama. He's kind of looking who's going to be able to develop him, help him get to the NFL. That's kind of the priority for him. And, even though you've got, AK Deer now in the fold, we've seen other classes except 2 running backs and them be pretty effective. I mean, obviously right now, Justice Haynes is trending towards a much bigger role than Richard Young, but Richard Young's right up there in the mix and should get some carries, some looks. And then if something ends up happening injury-wise, he's going to be definitely in the mix and seeing a pretty big workload. And we've seen in the past, the Eddie Lacy's of the world working with Trent Richardson working with Mark Ingram, just on and on and on. In today's college football, I mean, you really don't want to be a workhorse college running back because you want to limit the touches. You want to be efficient with your touches. You want a good offensive line, a good passing game that, creates favorable opportunities for you, all those different things. But you want to limit your touches. So the NFL is like, hey, you still got a lot of tread on the tires. We can certainly, use you for a while.
Yeah, I hear you, man. And I mean, like, it's going to be interesting to see who Alabama flips the other direction. You've seen some guys that have flipped out of Alabama here lately. I mean, you lose one guy to Tennessee, which is so rare because, I mean, when's the last time players were flipping to go to Tennessee from Alabama, right? And then, 2 guys flipped to Auburn, which I'm figuring they're going to go all in on trying to get every single in-state guy they can get. And that be kind of their MO. And I don't blame them. Look, Nick Saban won national championships with guys from Alabama. I mean, he eventually turned it into a national recruiting base. But when he first got to Alabama, you remember all the guys from in-state that he was getting. And I mean, there'd be a Mark Ingram, but there'd be a Julio Jones and this guy and that guy. I mean, it's like constant, So I'm curious to see where Alabama focuses their NIL money on players that are committed to other places.
Well, let me tell you where I think in-state recruiting matters. We've had this conversation on and off, and we all know my opinions on it for the most part. But what I will say, Alabama is going to be able to go other places and get really good players, right? That's a part of it. They're a national brand. How much is, like an Auburn's brand national? It's more of, if you can pull those really good in-state players, you're getting good players, but you're also keeping players from Auburn. And then when they try to go out and recruit the national guys, they can't do that as well. So really, it's more of you're hurting them while getting good players. I don't think it hurts Alabama for them not to have a lot of in-state players. And we'll find out in due time if I'm wrong on that, or if this even lasts long enough to ever find out one way or another. If it's a 1 year and it's done, they're back to it in 2025. I mean, or 2026 or whenever, doesn't really matter. But for now, there's such limited information, because we've never seen recruiting the way it is, where a team is not recruiting quote unquote great in state, but they're still got the number 1 or number 2 recruiting class competing for the number 1 class. I mean, it's such a small sample size, but I think more so it would be beneficial because it's hurting your in-state rival while also helping you.
Right. Alabama football practice today. Any intel there? Let me throw up some video. Now, this is actually from yesterday, but latest on football practice. I know we talked about it yesterday for a little bit. That Jam Miller was in a black no contact jersey. It was good to know that the club, as you called it, was off the hand of Zabien Brown, and that from what Kane Womack said, I was surprised by. He said it was one of the most physical practices that he's been a part of. That was kind of Nick Saban's MO. But if it was so physical, what I really like is that we haven't had to have a lot of guys in the black non-contact, and guys out, and guys hurt for the season.
Yeah, it was certainly a physical practice. I mean, guys were getting after it. They were hitting each other. That's offense and defense, and they were both bringing it. I think that bodes well. I mean, when you look at like the complexity of Alabama's offense, or how it's perceived as being extremely complex for defenses, imagine Alabama's defense having all off season to go against that in the spring, in fall camp, and with some, whether it's 7-on-7 in the summer, just all the different looks that they provide and the strain they do on opposing defenses. I mean, from a panic, we haven't seen this standpoint, I feel like Alabama's defense is going to be in really good shape because they see so many different things with Kalen DeBoer's offense. So we're not really talking about that enough. And we're not really talking enough about the youth of some of these guys. Obviously we are, as far as like the cornerback room and how they're young. Womack was asked about King Mack, had a lot of really good things to say about him, talked about him being very fast, very physical. He's got great instincts, makes plays on the ball, and he described him as a gamer. When the lights come on and you get in a game-like situation, his play seems to elevate, and he's hoping that continues and translates to Saturdays. But it's like, he's a young guy, and a guy like Zabien Brown, who's a true freshman. I mean, he was playing high school football last year, and Womack was sure to point out, hey, there's going to be some lumps along the way. There's going to be some growing pains. People need to understand that if Zabien Brown busts a coverage and someone gets a long touchdown, you can't get too down on the guy. It's unfortunate. The good part about it is you're expecting to have an offense that can compensate for a lot of that because they're putting up a lot of points themselves. But it's a learning moment for Zabien Brown. He's going to have to go through some of those. Every young player does. And, I think by the end of it, it's going to pay dividends for some of these guys, especially whether it be in 2024 or beyond in like 2025. If you're getting Zabien Brown tons of reps and you're getting a sophomore and King Mack tons of reps, all these different players, it's only going to help you in the future. But it's a matter of trying to compensate for some of that and overcoming some of that in these early stages.
I always wondered about Nick Saban because he would play the veteran guy, 90% of the time. I felt like you really had to be phenomenal or there had to be an injury for you to come into a position battle, maybe be slightly better or the same as the younger player and be the guy that played. And then, you would see guys, kind of just wait their turn. And if they, transfer portal, they might transfer out. With the way that the secondary blew out with T-Rob, and left, it kind of put Alabama in a spot where some of these guys with this amazing talent, these 5-star guys, are in a spot now where we're expecting to play. We expect to see Jalen Mbakwe. We expect to see Bam Bam Mincy. We expect to see Zabian Brown, right? And we're hoping, I guess, that the two transfers, and maybe we get something out of Jaleel Hurley in that cornerback spot. But I don't remember a whole lot of years under Saban where we had to depend on true freshmen like this. But at the same time, maybe these guys won't be as bad as we would expect.
Well, I mean, yeah, and the reason that you never really saw too many young players having any sort of significant role in Nick Saban's defenses is the standard in which, you have to be able to be trusted. And it can't even be like a trust, like we're confident you're going to do your job 95% of the time. Like you got to be, near 100%. And that is a very tough place to get, especially if you're a young player, because really, how do you earn that trust? You got to limit the mistakes, but you're going through a lot of these mistakes in like the spring or fall camp or whenever, and trying to grow from it and learn from it. But every time you make a mistake, and you might be better for it, and I'm sure Nick Saban knows you're better for it, but that's like a moment in his mind where he's like, I mean, can we trust you in this situation come game day? And you only get so many opportunities to prove that they can from that point forward. And it's like the complexity of the defense. There's so much that you have to know as far as the pattern matching scheme, how it operates. I mean, you're going to be playing zone sometimes. If this happens, you're going to be playing man. It's just such a complicated scheme that as a young player, you've never seen anything like it. College players have never seen anything like it. NFL players, a lot of times, go through their entire career. You can have Hall of Fame, corner that's never went through the complexities of what Nick Saban requires to play in his defense. And so, that's why Alabama defenders are very, sought after as far as the NFL, because you understand if they can grasp this stuff and play at a high level in that defense, what we're going to be doing is pretty simplistic in comparison. Now, sometimes you kind of create robots as far as their mentalities, and they're so worried about doing their job every play. That's obviously very important, but they forget to go play football sometimes. Certain guys they would execute their job at an extremely high level, consistent, all those things. But as far as the playmaking ability and the playing a little bit more free, maybe you guys, you don't get that from certain guys sometimes. So it's different. There was obviously a lot of benefits from Nick Saban's defense. I mean, he did it. He was the best to ever do it, in my opinion, as far as that side of the football. But there's some benefits as far as the way that they're making things a little bit more simple. Guys can grasp it. And I think that's going to help some of these young guys not only get on the field, but be comfortable and make an impact from an early portion of the season.
Hey, guys, we really appreciate you being part of Cover Crimson. You probably know us from other places. Bama Insider, we were there when it was existing for a while. We both were at On 3, Clint a little longer than me. And now we're here, though. But, Rivals, On 3, 24/7 Sport. We've covered all of them and a bunch of other places, too. I mean, I worked for the Crimson Tide Sports Network and the SEC Network, too. So coming together with the guys that disrupt the media and the next round, and then, Clint and I have wanted to do this for a long time. We really are excited about this, and we want you to be a part of it. And we appreciate you if you're already a part of it at covercrimson.com. Sign up for $1 right now. That's our message board. You're going to get exclusive video content as we build this thing up. I'm telling you, look, we're a week away. We're a little over a week away from the start of the season. But take advantage of it now. And no one is more informed on Alabama football than Clint. I mean, this guy is a machine. You hear him here. It's like hanging out with the Alabama football Terminator when he's able to spit out everything that's going on. And we can't tell you how much we appreciate all of you guys for being here, and want to invite you to be a part of that. And then in the comments section, all of you guys, thank you for the great comments and for being a part of everything that we're doing. But like and subscribe, give us a thumbs up. Channel's growing. We just want to continue to kind of tap into that algorithm as we build this daily live show. And we got a lot of other stuff coming as well. I can't wait to hang out with my old pal, my old buddy, my old partner, Mike Johnson. We got, I get to hang out with you, Mike Johnson, and Jake Coker. It's a pretty good crew right there. And then all you guys in the comment section. But thank you. Talking about Mike Johnson, former 2-time All-American, and captain. And same thing with Jake Coker. You know, those guys both have their hands right there in the cement at Denny Chimes, right? And so we know now who this year's captains are. And we didn't talk about it yesterday, so I figured it'd be worth talking about. But what a great group. Jalen Milroe, Deontay Lawson, Tyler Booker, and Malachi Moore. These guys, to me, are more than just football players. These are the guys that help keep the program together when you had coaches trying to pull players out because they're going somewhere else, and then they have a deal, or maybe the school that they're at is begging them to bring some of our guys with them. You got players that are out there and trying to figure out their families, how much money they can get by going to other schools that are also in the SEC or maybe not. These four guys stuck up for the University of Alabama. And Clint, I'm going to tell you, I'm a graduate of Alabama. My sister went to Alabama. My nephew's coming to Alabama. I love Alabama, and I really appreciate those guys that look at this more than just a football place and a way to make money, but a place that's special.
You're 1,000% correct. And it's more than just these four guys, and anybody will tell you that. It's Jaden Roberts, it's Jihad Campbell, it's Tim Keenan.
Yep.
The list goes on and on. I mean, there's a lot of players. These are they were like the leaders of the team. They were kind of the bigger name guys. They're obviously older. Malachi being, a fifth-year guy. The fact that, Tyler Booker is going into his third season, and he's been kind of a contributor for 2 years, all these different things. But, guys, I will say, and maybe it was maybe I was going about it wrong, but I'd always told people, and with the way things were trending with the NIL, but more importantly, the transfer portal, I thought the panic that would hit when Nick Saban finally chose to hang it up, I thought things are going to get ugly for a couple of years because guys are going to be, there's going to be this panic mode. What are they going to do next? Guys are going to bail. And that happened to an extent. It certainly did. But it's kind of, you had these types of players who held the line.
Mm-hmm.
And really, Justice Haynes deserves credit for continuing to ride with Alabama. Like, I don't want to take that away. But he was a second year. He was really only been in Tuscaloosa for a year. And I'm sure, it probably took some of the older guys being like, hey, stick with us, man. There was a bunch of players, and I couldn't tell you name by name who was the one fighting to stay and who are fighting for others to stay and who are the ones that were, maybe thinking about leaving. But the point is, the ones who held the line, not only is Alabama not in rough shape, they're in really, really good shape. Like, they're still in the national championship picture right after Nick Saban retires. And maybe, in a year from now or something, if things go wrong, you could still reach that point. But I'm not seeing that anymore. I'm seeing kind of this well-oiled machine that Nick Saban created for almost 2 decades. It continuing to truck on. They're recruiting well. The brand's strong. They're being, we haven't seen any games yet, and that's going to matter. And even if in year one, maybe it doesn't look the same as it did under Nick Saban, I think the underlying stuff that's going on in Tuscaloosa, the resources they have, Greg Byrne being, in charge of things, I feel really good about this program continuing to be one of the best in all of college football.
Yeah, so do I. And I don't think that the dynasty's dead. And I see where Adam says, Caden Proctor, great example of, hey, the grass is greener on the other side. And then you go over there and like Jake Coker said, he was at another school, and then he came to Alabama. He came from Florida State, and he's like, you don't realize how good it is, the food and the individual treatment that you get, and just the whole thing, not just going out there and playing football, but all of the things that it takes to do that at Alabama is top notch. And that's because of Nick Saban. And now Kalen DeBoer coming in. Now, Paul Feinbaum, he's the voice of the SEC, according to ESPN. And he once again is saying that Alabama's dynasty is over. Now, with Paul Feinbaum, I mean, he's kind of the shock jock of college football. So he can say whatever he wants, and then there's really no accountability. I mean, like, how many times was the dynasty dead under Nick Saban? And then, last year, Alabama beat Georgia and won the SEC and lost an overtime game to Michigan to go to the national championship game, which, by the way, they would have won. So there was really no dynasty. Rod has it. He said Shat. I probably would replace the A with an I, but that's kind of what Feinbaum does. But is there a part of you that feels like he's right?
I I think the Nick Saban dynasty is over. That does not mean the Alabama dynasty is over. And I think I don't think people fully understand the difference there. You assume because the Nick Saban dynasty is over that the Alabama dynasty is going to follow. And it's just, one of the best coaches in college football. You go look at coaching rankings, and there's a reason for it. He's earned that opportunity. He's earned that right. You look at the talent that's still in Tuscaloosa. You look at the talent that they're recruiting. Tell me from a dynasty perspective, okay, winning every other year on average, yeah, I think that's over. But if we're that's going to be the standard in which any dynasty is held from now until the end of time, I don't think Georgia's going to have a dynasty under Kirby Smart, because I think that it is a very competitive field right now. I think with NIL and stuff, you're going to have every year. Kirby Smart's going to have to battle a different program that's kind of swinging for the Ole Miss is that the team this year, in my opinion. They've swung for the fences. They're rolling out the red carpet, NIL money. Let's spend. Texas A&M tried to be ahead of that curve a little bit, but what they did was brought in a lot of dysfunction. You got to have a culture if you're going to take those swings, and you're going to see some who try it, who fail miserably and come up way short because of that culture problem. But Alabama is one of those few programs that it might not be a dynasty in the sense if the standard is the Nick Saban dynasty, it might not ever be that. But I think they're going to continue winning national championships, and they're going to continue to be competitive each and every year. So, I mean, I think we need to get off of this, holding the future to the past standard, because it's a different, and Nick Saban even experienced that. It's a different era of college football, just with, NIL and all that stuff. I mean, Alabama hadn't won a national championship since 2020. It's gotten pretty tough on everybody. So I don't think anybody should panic. I don't think the quote unquote Alabama dynasty is over. They're going to be right where they've been, which is in the conversation.
I felt like the media was and has been kind of this anti-Alabama, we call it Alabama fatigue, because a couple of years ago, Bryce Young's a senior. I thought Alabama was the best team in the country. They lost 2 games in overtime on last plays, right, or whatever. Like they lost one game in overtime and then 1 game on the last play, like one to Tennessee and then 1 to LSU. And you would have thought they got just absolutely boat raced in those games, right? And I put a lot of that on Bill O'Brien's offense. I thought it was just boring. But then, by the end of the year, I thought they would have beaten Georgia. Matter of fact, I said they would have beaten Georgia. They would have beaten Georgia, just like Georgia got beat last year by Alabama. And then they wouldn't have won. I think Alabama would have won it now, would have won it that year. But, outside of that, I feel like that with this new playoff, Kalen DeBoer, his hunger to be successful, that Alabama is going to be a little different, but they're going to be the same. And I love that Kalen DeBoer's here because there's just a little extra bit of hunger to get that national championship, to bring home number 19. And I'd love to see number 19. For everybody that's got those 18 helmets, let's rip it off and put that 19 on. I don't think it's that far off, but I love when Alabama's motivated. And I want to see what DeBoer does with that. But I'm excited, man. I think this is going to be a fantastic season.
Well, I mean, one area you can talk about the roster and the fact that they lost a lot of good players, then you bring a lot of good players in. They still had a lot of good players. You talk about, Nick Saban losing the greatest football coach of all time. That's fine. You replace him with one of the best football coaches in college football right now in Kalen DeBoer. But the one area that I think we're not talking about enough as far as upgrading is top to bottom, the coaching staff under the head coach.
Oh,
I think
point.
It is light years ahead of where it has been in recent years, because you brought up, Bill O'Brien, and that's kind of, that's so important, man. So you've got the offensive, I understand Nick Sheridan's going to be quote unquote calling the plays, but you got the offensive input from Kalen DeBoer, great offensive mind. I've continued to reiterate it all offseason. You've built this brain trust on the defensive side of the football, former head coaches and coordinators, and just, you're not going to really see some of these coaches look at things through a different lens when you've been a coordinator, you've been a head coach. You go into game plan, you're watching film, you're all of a sudden you're seeing stuff. If you're a defensive coordinator, you're not just focused on the cornerbacks. So you'll go in and you'll see something going on with maybe the linebackers or whatever. Maybe the offense is doing something, and you'll notice something, and then you bring it to the head coach or the defensive coordinator. Now, just that brain trust they've built is spectacular, and we're not talking enough about the impact that having a consistent, steady, quality coaching staff under the head coach how much that's going to help Alabama this season, or could help Alabama.
Yep, no doubt about it. Guys, we appreciate you. And let me tell you, by the way, as you hang out with us, that show's brought to you by MyBookie. We've all been there before. A weekend trip to the casino canceled because real life came calling. MyBookie's new and improved online casino is here to change the game. Dive into a truly realistic casino experience featuring the latest in slots, progressive jackpots, and live dealer action, all from the comfort of your own home. The MyBookie Casino provides a Las Vegas experience when the action is in your hands and you don't even have to wear pants. Start at MyBookie today with a generous sign-up bonus using the promo code NEXTROUND, and a revamped loyalty program ensures a host of exclusive VIP perks. The more you play, the more you win with MyBookie. Over-under on what is Auburn's over-under 7.5. Bama's over-under is 9.5. Did we both? I would take Alabama over at 9.5. I just think that they're going to be Alabama. And I saw where Steve Spurrier picked Alabama to win the SEC. So he likes DeBoer. He likes Milroe. I love it when people underestimate Bama. That's normally when the tide's at its most dangerous. That's when you get that no swim warning. There's some riptides in there. You better stay on the shore.
And it's a tough schedule. So if you pick Alabama to go 9-3 and you have them losing on the road to LSU, to Tennessee, and at home to Georgia, okay, I don't think that's absurd. Okay, so if these people that are saying 8-4 or whatever, come on, find me that fourth loss. Let's be realistic about it. Unless the wheels run off or something, I understand. If you want to say 9-3, I get it. I think that Alabama in those 3 games, at the very least, can go 1-2. And if they do that, in my opinion, they're going 10-2. So I've said that. I feel pretty confident about 10-2. I can see 11-1. Like I said, I can see 9-3. But it's going to be a fun season to watch. And I don't understand it's been wild to see how people have reacted, because they can't wrap their minds around the fact that Alabama's still in this conversation to this degree after you lose the greatest college football coach of all time. But it's not about what you lost, it's about what you have. And what Alabama has is one of the best coaches in college football, with one of the best rosters in college football, with one of the best support staffs or schools or programs or athletic departments or whatever you want to call it. They have one of the best, facilities, all that stuff. Tell me where they've really fallen off, significantly, and maybe we can talk. But until I see that, I'm not just going to assume it's going to be some cliff, because, Nick Saban retired.
Amen, brother. I think you just nailed it. I don't know how you end a show like this on a better point, other than to tell you guys to stick around. We got a lot of great content on covercrimson.com. And Clint and I will be back on tomorrow to go over the practice and tell you what's going on, and update you on the latest as it comes to Alabama Crimson Tide news. So like, subscribe, hit the bell too, so you know when we're going live, because we may do some pop-up shows. We've done that on the weekend where we've been like, hey, let's just talk about the scrimmage. We didn't even have it planned. We just jump on and talk about it. So thanks for hanging out with us, guys, and roll Tide, everybody.